Recorded live at the V3 TV studio in sunny England, it's the Vaughn Johseph Show.
Welcome to the show, guys. It is your host, Vaughn Johseph. Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you taking the time to come and spend it with me today. So politics, that's what we're talking. It's all over the news. We have a new president in the United States, Mr. Donald Trump, causing a little bit of feather ruffling. What do you expect? That's politics, right? Business as usual. So we turn our direction over to Illinois, more importantly, Chicago suburb, a little bit to the west, Wheaton, Illinois. Mr. Bobby McNeily is a current Wheaton, Illinois resident who is running for Wheaton City Council. This guy is the youngest, I do believe, person to ever run for city council in Wheaton, Illinois. I believe he's probably a bit younger than some of my suits that I have, but that's an amazing and impressive feat. So currently he is now leadership director for Turning Point USA, which is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to educate, train, and organize students to promote the principles of fiscally responsibility, free markets, and limited government. So, Mr. McNeily, thank you for joining us today. We also have Mr. AlfonZo Rachel, political commentator and analyst. So, gentlemen, how are you today?
Good, man. Thank you.
Doing well. Thank you for having us.
Fabulous. Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules to come and chat with little old me. So that makes me very, very happy. So, Mr. McNeily, politics, man, that is a very, very tough business. It takes a extremely thick skin, and not only that, a deep desire to serve the public. So what made you decide to go into the political arena?
Well, I think that's just it, that deep desire to serve the community. I've grown up in DuPage County, where Wheaton is the flagship community of, and I hope to serve the community at large by not only what I'm involved with right now, but by being on the city council.
Excellent. So you were an actor before, actually. So I know that's another very tough business to be in. I myself going to an audition tomorrow morning for a Marvel comic book commercial or video or something to that effect. Was that something that you think prepared you for moving into this arena? Because I know, and as you may know, well, as you do know, the president of the United States was on television, and also Mr. Ronald Reagan, former president, all TV personalities. You're following in their footsteps.
Well, there's no doubt that it helps because you get used to rejection, and a lot of people will slam doors on you and say, you're not good enough, or you're not the right fit. So I think it helps to enter into the political arena where a lot of people will say, it's not your time, or you may not be ready. And it gives you that fuel and that armor to move forward.
Excellent. Do you aspire to run for president at some point in your career, or is your desire to work at a more localized level, which many feel is where the real change is made?
Well, we'll see wherever the good Lord, what path he puts me on. But it takes a very special person to be president of the United States. There's no doubt. I feel right now at the local level and potentially as a state legislature, I could do a lot of good just because I know that I could take the skills and things that I already know and apply them to those roles. So I really hope to be a city councilman in the coming months.
Excellent. Polls show that most voters don't think that government works in the United States, at least. What would you do to reform the underlying structures and systems that seem to be a major cause of this problem?
Well, I think a lot of it is looking at our tax structure and reforms right then and there. If you look at it from a federal level, they talk about the tax code as much larger than even the Bible. So very few people can understand it. And that's why we all have to spend so much money around this time of year to hire accountants and experts to take care of this stuff. Strategic ideas and forward thinking and rolling up the sleeves will really do good in the long run. And I think we can apply this to a lot of different aspects American industry and American law, and to what's happening at every level of government, from the local level to the state level to the federal level. So I think a lot of it takes common sense. It takes people who aren't driven by greed, but by rather wanting to serve the common good. And that's one area I really want to focus on, especially for us. It's not federal taxes, naturally, but it's the property taxes that are a real burden on my fellow neighbors here in Wheaton.
AlfonZo Rachel, ladies and gentlemen, he was giving me a little bit of an education on the Bible a few nights ago on a separate issue. So how are we doing today?
I'm doing good, man, and I'm humbled by you saying that even I would be able to give you an education. I just considered it us having an enlightened discussion, man. But thank you. Along the lines that he's been asking a question about you, if you could, Bobby, because we talk about serving the public, and who can say like what a person's intentions are, and some of these politicians may even have the best of intentions when they go into office. But somehow even their best intentions end up being more self-serving than a public service. Can you give us an idea of, like, if people are going to throw their vote behind somebody, what would be like a cue that you would give them and say, look, when you look at this person's policies, these policies won't really serve the public. These policies are more self-serving, whether it be for themselves or special interests. Or these are actually policies that will serve the public and actually better enable the public to be able to serve themselves, to better their municipalities or better their localities. Can you give us a picture of what that would look like?
Well, I think you look at the person who really indicates that they don't want to be there forever, that they want to go in there, it's their time, perhaps term limit themselves, and say, I want to get this accomplished in this amount of time. Now, that's difficult sometimes because government by its own nature is very slow, which sometimes ends up being a good thing for us because the federal government seems to keep growing and growing and growing, which is also a problem in and of its own nature. So it may sound cliche, but you have to look for people like George Washington, for example. You can really look to his example, and I think it still applies today. A person who is very humble, a person very prayerful and religious. Not that it has to necessarily be that way, but someone who isn't driven by a title versus what they want to accomplish ultimately.
So you mentioned term limits, and this is something that I was having a discussion with someone on a different show, actually, about 2 or 3 months ago. Do you think that there needs to be term limits for people that are in the House and Senate? Because obviously, you don't have that, and it seems like you have these career politicians that exist. And we were actually having a side discussion about that today because Nancy Pelosi popped up on the TV and she was making reference to something, the Affordable Care Act that President Trump is going to obviously try to have eliminated. And it seems like when you have these people that are there for so long that it becomes a problem. Do you agree with that, or?
I would generally agree. It's, especially with congressmen, because they have to run every 2 years in the House of Representatives. It seems like those big issues like immigration, even healthcare to an extent, the tax reform as well, just kind of keeps kicking the can down the road, instead of addressing it really when they have to. I feel like with term limits, although it may not be an end-all solution, at least you'll have an opportunity for a recycling of fresh ideas and new strategic thinking to come in to Washington and to some of the other state houses. In fact, I believe the majority of state capitals have now adopted that they do have term limits for their legislators, or legislators, pardon me. So that's an important first step. It's meant to be of a service to your fellow citizens, and then to step back and let someone else share their ideas. I think that's really important.
I agree. Donald Trump is expected to sign a new travel ban this week, actually tomorrow, Wednesday, according to the Associated Press. Anyway, is what I read, and that's hopefully it'll happen, because I'm excited to see what this is all going to entail. So. The fresh travel ban was expected apparently to be signed last week, but the White House spokesman Sean Spicer claimed the president had delayed the order in order to, for it to make sure that the plan was effective and was presented in a flawless manner. So, do you feel that this travel ban that is being implemented is going to be an effective measure to reducing the threat of harm to American people from terrorists?
Well, yes and no. It may reduce the threat externally, but those who are losing their nuts in America, who are upset about it, and in the PC crowd who get triggered by such a policy, that may be more of an immediate threat of what they try to do from within. But but this reminds me to ask you, Robert, when it comes to things like this. The left is always going to throw things at us like the race card. And when it comes to even with the issue of Islam, somehow even the gender card gets thrown in there. Now, we all three understand how, the Sharia views like homosexuality. These are the real hostile people towards homosexuality. I may not agree with the lifestyle, but I don't want them killed. I'd rather them see the light than to see their own blood being spilled. But the thing is, they'll use things like, you're a racist and you're a sexist and you're a homophobe and you're an Islamophobe. To do things like, they'll say things like this to impede policies like what Trump is trying to do and to stigmatize what he's doing. So how, in your view, how do we get past like these to come with practical policy, even though they may seem hard-nosed, right? They're hard-nosed policies. But how do we get over the hump, and how do we sell it to the culture? And when you answer this, can you do it in your Russian accent? I'm kidding.
Well, I think it's true. I've seen it in my own race where my opponent's campaign has literally put out people anonymously on the internet calling me a racist. And I think the best way we can handle this situation is literally talking neighbor to neighbor, or if you have a mic stand, talking about your specific issue, speaking in detail about it, because truly there is so much fake news out there. And it's because we're so technologically advanced, which is a good thing. We can access virtually anything we want. And unfortunately, a lot of that's just simply untrue. And it makes it more difficult for those who follow or adhere to a set of conservative principles, or even forget conservative, liberal, progressive, what have you, just practical policies. If someone else is jealous of that, or if someone else sees it as whatever they see it as, they're so quick to attack it. And I think civility does go a long way to restoring our republic. I mean, it's very important. So in a way, it's kind of like turning the other cheek. But I don't know. It's kind of like speak softly but carry a big stick. I think standing our ground in that sense is going to be very important moving forward.
Agreed. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned gender, and obviously there's I can't even think of a word to describe how big this is right now in the news and the societal construct. Gender and sexuality it's a huge topic these days, whether it be transgender rights or same-sex marriage, whatever the case may be. Why do you think that this has taken such center stage in both the political arena and socially?
I think, as entertainers, we understand the dynamic of having, the good guy, bad guy, antagonist and protagonist, or even the story of how the little guy rises above. Now, when we look at homosexuals, or we look at those who are gender conflicted, if you will, right now these are the little guys. You know, I mean, who's going to pick on and love is love. You see them, that they're able to show displays of affection, and they just want to express themselves. And this is art, and it's beauty, and whatnot. And once again, this is in the eye of the beholder. And I think a lot of the media and venues where propaganda is done is infiltrated, or even run by people of this persuasion. And right now, and unfortunately, they attach their plight to plights that, people in the black community have had, and try to say that this is the same thing that has happened with Jim Crow and the other apartheid policies that the Democrats have put on America, that America is still so bitter over. Now they've attached themselves to these things. So right now it has, even though it's a small percent of the population, it has become a huge issue. And, and even for you, Bobby, these are issues that they bring up, they'll throw in your face. Even though you're saying, hey, can we discuss, whether it's issues of jobs or improving the economy or improving security and, and having a better tax plan, that squares better with the Constitution. Well, before you can even get to that, they've already waged a prejudice against you by throwing the issue of sex in your face and race in your face and these other or whether abortion, these other social issues that they'll throw in our face. And so would you agree that these are things that they use before you can even get started talking about, pocketbook politics and just being able to pay the rent without, these regulations and fees that entities have to recover their costs on. Before you can even get started, you're already hit with this prejudice, and I think that's is that kind of like the line of the questioning that you got going, Joseph?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I lost a bit of the dialogue there. It is. I don't understand why it's taken such a big push. And you say that it's a small population. I don't know the exact numbers, but their numbers are what they are. But
well, actually, let me back it up. It's a small population who actually participate in this, but it's a large population. Not even a large population. We know that as entertainers and with media and entertainment and news media, they can sensationalize it to look like it's the bigger picture. But in terms of people who participate in this, and then there's people who are sympathetic to it.
Yeah, well,
and I think a lot of people.
Supporters. There will always be supporters.
Right. You got those who are sympathetic to it, who are, and they don't want to be seen as closed-minded. They want to be seen as enlightened, and they're going to push the policies that they want on piggybacking off of this issue to make themselves seem like, well, morally superior people.
No, agreed. You mentioned earlier about them using their cause and aligning it with the civil rights movement. And that was something that always bothered me, because I don't understand how you can compare my ethnicity to your behavior. You can't do that. So
now, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
I was just going to say, and bringing this to you, Robert, you as entertainers, right? As entertainers, and we see how this, especially in the entertainment industry, that there's a lot of sympathy for this. And because of a lot of this sympathy, it gets in the way of more, prudent policy, practical policy, not this collectivist idea and not this socialist idea that the left wants us to have. And they're using these narratives to basically get in the way of you. Now, what is your plan to be able to get through that? Because as you know, the campaign wages on, these things they come up to your door. And how do you get past that? What is your means to be able to sell it to the public? Maybe even leaning on your background as an entertainer to be able to come up with creative means or compelling means to say, like, look, this is how it works in the real world, as opposed to this fantasy world that the left is trying to sell on you.
Well, absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, it's, being an entertainer, I think helps you to have discussions like we're having right now, using multimedia to really talk about these things where maybe the traditional politician may not want to address it. because it's there's too much stigma surrounding it. For me, at least in my race, it's really going door to door and hearing what my constituents have to say, what their concerns are. And in a race like this, it boils down to, property taxes, stormwater management, sewers, stuff that's not really necessarily exciting or sexy at the end of the day, but they're extremely important matters, and you need serious people there to help make these critical decisions for the next 10, 20 years down the road of our city here. So that's why these institutions are important, and that's why I hope that good people continue to pursue politics, whether they be in the law field or the entertainment field or they're business people. We need people from all aspects of life being involved in public service. And again, they laugh at our current president. They laughed at Ronald Reagan, but they are both strong listeners. And I think you're especially seeing that now, in the Trump administration. And in a way, it's ironic because he is such a large figure, especially when he's in a room, he knows how to command it. But there's also this side to him where you could see he's taking in all the information presented to him around the table. And I think that's a strong quality of a great leader. And that's what I'm trying to do in my own race, is really, talk to people. And I know that some of my votes may not 100% line up with every one of my constituents, but I want them to know that they have direct access to me, that we can have this continual dialogue so we can do what's best for our city. And I think that kind of mentality will win at the end of the day. You can go around banging pots and pans, and I talked to a friend about this the other day on the other side of the aisle. They were trying to talk to my congressman, and they went in there and they said, we're going to storm the offices. And I used to intern in the office. I said, you could just call ahead and you'll probably have a meeting within a week. So there's no need to make a huge show of it and then put it on Facebook. Respect goes both ways.
It is sometimes a lot about impact, visual impact, and the optics of it, though, isn't it? So that's usually why they want to organize and so on. We touched briefly earlier, I believe it was Zoe, on fake news, and it seems like there is this proliferation of it. Just it's everywhere. It's rife, and I turn on, like you said, Facebook, and even sometimes the main news I see on television. I never know what to believe anymore with most of the stuff I see. We did a show on this years ago. Where do you go online to find reputable information? You never really know what you're seeing. I can put up something and say this is fact and then put it out, and then people will retweet it. Somebody made a comment on a post that I put up, and they didn't watch the video that we made. They only commented based upon the thumbnail, the photo image, because we were talking about cheating and relationships, and it was a Valentine's Day show, and we had a picture for Ashley Madison up as the thumbnail. So someone said, "Screw that site," and blah blah blah, and she starts ranting, and I'm like, "Did you even listen to the show?" And she's like, "No, I'm just talking about the picture." So, so many times they just take a headline and they run with it. They don't bother to investigate, dig deeper, and I don't understand why we've become such a short attention span theater society, but we have. And I'm seeing things like on the news, and like we said about politics, is such a game where you need to have such a thick skin, because there's all this mudslinging and things of that nature. How do you deal with something like that, Bobby? Because obviously I'm assuming you're faced with all sorts of attacks from all over the place with regards to your personal life, maybe your family life, your business ventures, and so on.
For me, first and foremost is faith in God. So a lot of silent prayer is very helpful and effective, and really being able to channel the question as to why I'm doing this in the first place. Because sometimes that will pop into your head. Sometimes there are tough campaign days, and they're long and they're brutal. And you ask yourself, well, what's this all for? And that's always a good reminder as to why the Lord has put it on your heart. At least it's been very helpful for me. I've also have a very close-knit and strong family, so they've been very supportive in this process, and having them nearby is extremely helpful because the family takes a sacrifice and a toll as well. Even though I'm not married, I don't have kids, but even for my parents and for my brother and sister-in-law, it's a journey for them as well to see the process, because they might even hate it more than me when I see my name being slandered, or when they see my name. It's probably worse off for them, to tell you the truth. They tell me, we don't know how you do it, but that's been nice. And actually within this political process, I should mention that there are incredible people that are supporting me and behind me. And most of the apparatus of the DuPage Republican Party has been very supportive. And these are a lot of people who are former military members, have seen combat. One gentleman was a lieutenant colonel over in the Middle East, did, I believe, 4 tours of duty in command during Operation Iraqi Freedom. So I'm very humbled to be in the presence of some incredible people, and they help sustain me and give me that good energy, that high energy to get the tasks done, and really, really focus.
Excellent. That's all we've got time for, you guys. I thank you both for your time. Mr. AlfonZo Rachel, Mr. Bobby McNeily, Robert McNeily. I don't say Robert because I don't have a tie on, so I can call you Bobby. Anything else before we let you guys go?
I'm good, man. I think we've gotten down to some good nitty gritty here. Yeah, good luck to you. Godspeed, Bobby. Robert.
Thank you. And I just would like to mention that you can see my information at www.McNeily4Wheaton.com. That's the number 4. And the election will be April 4th. That's on a Tuesday. And early voting starts March 10th. So it's coming up here, right down to the wire.
It's coming up really soon. That's in, about 2 weeks now. So.
Yeah, roughly.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So good luck to you, and we look forward to seeing the results. Bobby McNeily, AlfonZo Rachel, you guys, thanks for tuning in. And as always, check out v3tv.uk or check me out right here at joseph.com for the Vaughn Johseph Show, and we will see you next time.